Good afternoon, I'm Ken Walton, classical music critic of The Scotsman and co-founder, along with Herald critic Keith Bruce, of the classical music website VoxCarnyx. We're delighted to be involved with St Mary's Music School in this ambitious series of cultural conversations. The past three events have been concentrated on specific projects centred on milestones for the school, such as the prospective move to fantastic new premises at the old Royal High School building, or the amazing Seven Hills project, involving a major series of new commissions aimed at celebrating the school's 50th anniversary in June 2023. Today's conversation, however, is about the here and now. It's a fascinating opportunity to gain first-hand insight into what it has meant to teach and to be taught at St Mary's during a period of unprecedented upheaval. What the experience has meant to teachers charged with ensuring that pupils' progress in life continues without disadvantage, to pupils whose learning experience has unavoidably been challenged, and what it's meant to the school as a whole as it embraced the many critical challenges and unexpected opportunities. With me to shed some light on these questions are John Cameron, who's Assistant Director of Music and Head of Keyboard at the school, and two final year students, the Head of School, Eve Bullis, and Deputy Head of School, Lachlan Kennedy. I wonder if I could ask you briefly to introduce yourselves. I mean, John, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you, Ken. Yes, my name's John Cameron, and I'm the Assistant Head of Music at the school, having been the Head of Keyboard for some years. I took on this new role at the beginning of last year, primarily to support our Head of Music in the work that he does. I'm still very active on the shop floor, as it were. I do a lot of playing. Piano mostly, accompanying most of the students, if not all the students, at some time or other. So I'm a general dog's body. I do just a bit of everything, really.
Thank you. Eve, how do you fit into life at St Mary's? What brought you there, and what are you majoring on musically?
So I joined St Mary's in S1. I am a saxophonist, mostly specialising in jazz, but I'm quite open to everything. And this year I've been pupil head of school, which has been great. So yeah, that's me.
Good. And Lachlan, you also hold a senior post within the school.
Yes. So I'm Lachlan Kennedy. I started at the school in 2013, so this is my 8th year here, and I'm a violinist. I mainly focus on classical, but I do a lot of traditional music as well, and a little bit of jazz here and there, so yes.
Good, and we're going to hear a bit of that traditional music later on. For everyone though, this has been a year like no other. John, was it clear from the start what the nature and the extent of the challenges were going to be, and what stood out as the key priorities, especially as a music school?
Well, I don't think anybody could have expected lockdown, and I think we got 3 or 4 days warning before we knew we had to shut up shop, and there was a huge amount of head scratching and soul searching behind the scenes to test various platforms that we could use that would meet the requirements of the academics and the music provision we offer, as well as being able to keep oversight of all the issues that teaching young children bring up. And I mean, that was only one side of things. You know, the other side was somehow holding on to the school community feel. I mean, St Mary's is a very small school, and it was so important to be able to keep the family together, as it were. So as well as the academics and a very full music program, and of course the music program involved individual lessons, group lessons, coaching, chamber music, orchestra, choir, oral, all of these things we really had to struggle with. But we also added in sort of social type activities. So there was a lighthearted element too. You know, we had quizzes, and I think Dr. Taylor recorded 17 or 18 assemblies in the grounds of the school with various topics, so we could keep that meeting space active and alive, so we could sort of look out for each other. It was so very easy to lose sight of individuals being so remote. And of course, taking a register is a very complex thing when when people are scattered to the four winds, and all it takes is a I've got an issue with my broadband, sir, and then, and there they went. So we had things like Kahoot quizzes were a bit of fun, and Ken was very keen to get the parents involved and on side with what became quite a mammoth project. So he ramped up parent association meetings, so that was regular to and from contact from parents and kids alike. So those were the main priorities, really: keep the school together and provide what we could provide. And there's no sense that we could provide everything, certainly not in the same way. So we had to do a lot of quick thinking, a lot of creative thinking, and not all of it was high tech. Some of it was low tech, but we got there in the end. I think we managed to hold on, and I'm very, very pleased and proud of what we managed to achieve, actually.
Eve, from the pupils' perspective, what was the feeling among the pupils when it became clear that life might be seriously interrupted?
I don't think it was a pleasant feeling for anyone. I mean, especially St Mary's, it's such a small school. We all know each other. It's basically like a big family, and a very, very small school. But I don't know, I think none of us knew what to expect, as I don't think anyone knew what to expect with COVID. It's nothing that's happened before, but at the same time, we are really lucky that we were able to keep in touch with each other. We were able to all come on a lesson, and I mean, music history, for example, we all had our scores in front of us. We were all able to go and listen to the music and come back and talk about it afterwards. So in terms of communication and how that was carried out, it was successful, I think, for the circumstances, but not pleasant.
I mean, I mentioned earlier on, particularly it being a music school. As a violinist, Lachlan, there's a lot of riding and regular tuition and group experience. How concerned were you that might be seriously interrupted?
Well, yeah, I think it was quite concerning. Yeah, there was the whole idea of using Zoom lessons, which actually worked very, very well given the circumstances. It gave us the ability to continue that weekly sort of format of seeing your teacher once or twice a week and just ticking over things and making sure everything's going smoothly. And just that regular contact is also just really nice to have, given we were all fairly isolated from each other. So that was really good. So yeah, I think it was quite a success. Yeah.
In meeting the challenge, of course, John, you did mention that some of the approaches that were being taken. How much, in addressing this, how much was from a strategic as much as a practical standpoint?
Well, I mean, there was a sense that we were going to have to make this an opportunity to try out new technologies. We knew we were all going to have to upskill pretty quickly. I mean, now it's second nature to sit on Zoom, but I mean, I don't think I'd ever had a FaceTime call or a Skype call ever where I felt that I had to have my camera on, and that was a whole new experience. So it was trying to normalize what we could provide rather than reinvent the wheel. So, I mean, it was important that we tried to get the program as it was sort of transferred into this digital medium, always with the caveat that it was never going to be as good. We knew that. So we had to sort of cover the problems we could and just hold up our hands and say, well, look, the sound quality on Zoom is never going to work for a musician. We knew that, we understood that. But I mean, the use of Microsoft Teams and Zoom allowed much easier access to resources. As a community, we could pass on information and share in a way which is it's quite difficult in the run of things once you're, in school, busy doing your thing. So as I said, we brought on some, we had a lot of chats between senior members of staff and the pupils, and a lot of creative solutions were found to allow things like lunchtime concerts to happen. It was important that for young musicians, performing is hugely important, and that was the first worry. We thought we'd lose all of that ability. We're still struggling a little bit with wind players, but again, we're working still at solutions to allow that to happen on and off. So, I mean, the hardware also allowed us to invite guests in from all around the world, which was new, of course. When we put on masterclasses at school, it's not unusual to send to London or to Paris for someone to come in and spend the day with us. But in this digital environment, it was much easier to get hold of Stephen Huff and Antonio Papano in Rome. And, it was a fantastic treat, really, to have people into the school, but also because of the situation they found themselves in, very much more personal reflection was possible. It's really interesting to talk to someone like Angela Hewitt to see how she was coping with lockdown and the problems she was faced with. So that was a huge advantage. So we realized that although we were frustrated on many levels, we were actually in a really positive position if we chose to roll with the technology. I mean, of course, having access to a smartphone and a laptop meant we all became sound recordists and film producers. We were submitting recordings, we were videotaping lessons, we were sharing lessons much more widely than we would. It's normally one-on-one, and it was so nice to be able to invite other members of the faculty in to share expertise. I mean, I am talking it up. It's been very difficult and to motivate the kids too, of course, and things like Zoom fatigue. This is all new to us, and I think we all know what that is now. So it was what we really focused on was keeping the school together, doing what we could do, and trying to create an environment that was supportive. And we knew there was things that weren't going to work, and but the upskilling has been remarkable. I mean, we've had animations from the kids. We've had string players working with dancers, thanks to our head of strings, Dr. Pearson. She, I mean, it's wonderful to have a 9-year-old violinist playing with a professional dancer remotely in their front room, locked down. So these kind of things, wouldn't have been available to us. So, very, very impressive, really.
Indeed, I mean, and you outlined the fact that, in a sense, there was opportunity there as well as firefighting. Eve, this must have been an equally upsetting time for the pupils. Was there a conscious awareness among the student body that the school was supporting you?
Yeah, I think the school has done everything for us, everything that's been possible. But at the same time, it has been incredibly difficult. I mean, I'm a saxophonist, so I've not been able to play in the room as anyone until about a month ago, where I can now play with like sheets between us. And I think as a jazz musician, or like any musician, music is about collaboration. It's about playing with people. So to not be able to do that has been really difficult for me, as I'm sure it has been for everyone. But I think it kind of makes you question what we're actually doing, like what's our duty as musicians almost, because I think we kind of figured this thing out where I could play in a room next door to Neil, my friend, who plays piano, although we're boarders and we basically live together, and we weren't able to play in the same room. So it's been really tough, but the school has done everything for us, and they've just hired this marquee which we've been able to play in, so that's been amazing.
Lachlan, I mean, that was from the musical perspective. From a broader academic perspective, both you and Eve must have you're approaching critical points in your schooling. What were your personal fears in that respect?
Well, there was always the worry that we weren't going to be able to get face-to-face tuition from our teachers, and we were going to be left sort of out to dry. But I mean, of course, the school handled it incredibly well. All of our timetabled academic lessons were held on Teams, and given the fact we're such a small school, I think one of them was a one-on-one for physics, and then maths was a class of 3, I think. And it was just really nice to be able to just talk to other people, even if it is on a screen. And the teachers were fantastic at getting back to us with all our work. And yeah, they really, really pulled it out and made it work, you know. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you and Eve are both key figures in the school as head of school and deputy head of school. Eve, were there things that you felt you could do to support the situation, in particular to support your fellow pupils?
Yeah, I think coming up with ideas has been difficult because, I mean, you can come up with ideas, but people need to have the motivation to do it. And it's kind of coming up with things that it's just like light-hearted things which are kind of keeping the school together. So we kind of formed this physical challenge throughout lockdown, where everyone just counted how many kilometers they were running, cycling, or walking every week. And every week we had we added it all up, and then each house we saw like who is on the leaderboard in houses, and then we had a pupils versus teachers challenge as well, with the same idea, which the pupils won, which I was very happy about. But I think it's just been things like that, trying to keep the school together, getting people out, and keeping that community. That's kind of what I've tried to do. So yeah. Yeah.
Lachlan, I mean, I think you are involved specifically with the buddying scheme. Is that correct? Yeah. Did you feel that you had an important role to play there with the younger pupils? And you know, was that a sort of inspirational aspect of the job, the role for you?
Well, yeah, I think the main reason we brought that back was because when I was younger, when I was in the junior school, we always had a buddy, and I've kept in contact with both of the ones that I've had, and they were huge role models for me. So yeah, I think the buddy system was fairly important throughout the lockdown, trying to keep the whole school community going, keeping the younger ones in on it and the older ones, and it kind of stopped there from being a divide where it was just your own year groups are sort of mingling online. Because obviously when you're walking around the school, you're walking past everyone, you're seeing everyone. But when you're isolated and online, you're only seeing the people who are in your classes. So yeah, I think the buddy system was an important part throughout the lockdown.
John, you spoke earlier about the digital having to develop a lot more in that very quickly. Given again the fact that it's a music school, it requires a lot of face-to-face tuition and discussion. Can you tell us a bit more about the extent to which this digital innovation became and perhaps will become more part of the school teaching, but how it reconciles with that aspect of music?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say about that is that one thing that we all participated in was creating resources, a sort of data bank, as it were. So that could be as simple as having a sort of repository for piano accompaniments for kids to dip in and out of. But there were a whole raft of online resources that remain there. And as part of a sort of more outward facing, it's been fantastic to develop that a little bit, to not only share that with our own kids, but to be able to share that out with the school community. I mean, this is a case in point. We've got guests today learning a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes here. But having sort of online tutorials and workshops and and all teachers have done that in a slightly different way. And you know, there was obviously a lot of files were exchanged, but they remain there, and they have started to grow into sort of database that we can use more openly with others. We can share expertise. We can share innovation. We drafted a complete oral program within the space of a couple of weeks. We have done public masterclasses for flute and for piano, and I think there's one for jazz improvisation coming up, and it has sort of inspired many of our staff to look at how they teach. There's nothing quite as stark as reliving a lesson that you gave some weeks ago and realized that things could have been said differently, or they could be improved. You know, there's a whole raft of benefits that have come from being able to sort of examine what we provide and how we communicate that. And things, of course, like auditions. I mean, we've got to think about the future, and it's a very difficult time to recruit people, of course. People are uncertain as to how much they can travel. Will lockdown strike again? Is it now really a time to make that change? So we've had to move our auditions online. We've had to try and, as part of our audition process, we have children into school for a few days to see how it is for them and get to know to be shown around and get a feel for the place. We haven't been able to do that. We've been able to do a part of that digitally, but actually the online outreach there has worked very well. We've sort of been hit by the perfect storm because Brexit rears its head when we start talking about recruitment. But even there, behind the scenes, we're looking at creating programs that could be rolled out internationally. So it started a conversation we didn't know we were going to have. But you know, it's been very useful. I mean, I say that very quietly, but in actual fact, that sort of self-reflection has been very useful. And I feel that we've had just a fraction more space to really just take a breath and have a look around and see what the state of play is and where we fit and what needs to change and what's actually valuable here. As Eve said, it's sort of thrown the world of a musician into doubt, actually. I mean, we are in a very, very odd position where we are training young musicians for a life and a career that is changing overnight. So, I mean, that's a huge topic for many another Zoom, I'm sure. But I'd be interested to see how Eve and Lachlan see that going forward, certainly.
Well, let's ask them. Eve, have your career or life aspirations changed in any way or form from what they were before the pandemic and living through this experience?
Yes. So I think the past year and a half has been incredibly damaging to the next generation of musicians. I think because we've had COVID, we've had Brexit, we've had the government telling musicians to retrain, we've had funding cuts in the arts. We kind of get the idea that music isn't valued in the same way that other areas of society are. So I think like we kind of are now on the defensive. We kind of feel like we need to prove that music actually has value, which, I mean, I'm not sounding very optimistic, but it's not been an optimistic time for musicians, especially young ones who need to be inspired, who need to have a drive to want to make music and feel like that is going to be valued. So that has actually really affected me. I have a place at Edinburgh next year to study English literature and philosophy. But at the same time, I am going to be putting in another application to Oxford for academic music next year, which has kind of been inspired from this year looking at issues within music. I know Oxford's course does have a lot of focus on issues in music, and COVID has been a time to reflect on the industry. There's been loads of articles been put out, for example, about women in jazz, which obviously, if I chose to go into the industry, I would have been affected by. So yeah, I think there have been times of lightness in COVID, but I think it has been hugely damaging for the music industry and for young musicians.
Lachlan, I mean, your instrument, the violin, that would take you into a slightly different sort of area of the profession, or different sort of brand of activity. Do you feel much the same? Have you the same thoughts?
I do feel that the pandemic has been hugely damaging to the performing musician. It's kind of felt like it's almost killed all sense of what a performing musician is. Again, as what you've said, with the government telling musicians to retrain, and it just feels like music is on a huge sort of decline into the dark depths of despair. But in terms of it changing my personal way forward, I was always, I think, going to go into academic music anyway, which is what I'm doing next year. I'm going to Cambridge to do academic music. Mm-hmm. But I think if I had been going into a more performative role, I think the idea of orchestras, of chamber ensembles, of string quartets, it just would have been such a burden to think about. So a lot, just because the idea of the orchestra just seems to be getting more and more outdated. And the idea of having 60 people sitting in a room, close quarters together, for however long a day you're rehearsing, it almost seems alien now to think back after the year and a half we've been in the pandemic. So yeah, I do think there is light at the end of the tunnel, in the sense that people are doing some really, really cool things with performance, especially through the pandemic. People have been just making it work, and we're starting to see totally new things coming out, which is exciting. But I think we're gonna have to wait and see what happens with it all, because I think there are going to be huge changes coming out of this.
It's really interesting to hear that from both of you at your stage in life. And John, I just wonder, in finishing with that, that's quite a tall order for a music school to take that on board and address. How do you feel about that? Where does St Mary's go in that sense?
I can't believe I'm going to be the positive voice here. Normally I walk around with a face like sin. I'm just going to very, very quickly talk about the achievements. This is despite that extreme pressure that our pupils have felt, and we feel for them. The landscape has changed in a seismic way, but nobody knows what's coming, and it's the Eves and the Lachlans that are actually going to be responsible to shaping that going forward. And if you look back at the past 18 months within the school, the creativity and positivity, no matter how one feels personally about the situation, is breathtaking. And we've been able to hold a full program of our recital prizes despite COVID. Our major concerts, we did that. When I say we, I mean the whole school did that. Eve did that, Lachlan did that. Our pupils' willingness to adapt and to enable their colleagues and to encourage them is humbling, really. You know, our further education offers. I mean, on the surface, we're still as successful as we ever were. But the takeaway for me has been that it strikes me whatever is thrown at kids, they bounce. They, you know, as a whole. And if they don't bounce with a smile, they bounce nonetheless. Terrific resilience has been shown. And, you know, if we did nothing else but teach kids to read and write and be resilient, we're doing a great job. And the kids that are coming out of school at the moment are, yes, dismayed, bewildered, blinking into the sunlit highlands that the freedom from school will offer, for sure. Look at that smile, Lachlan. You know, there's also team working backstage, which the kids don't see. There's a lot of pedaling backstage going on behalf of the younger pupils. What's coming next? What happens next time this comes? You know, we're already thinking about that. We're already scratching our heads thinking about these things. We're working flat out to create programs and make relationships to allow us to continue to grow. So, I mean, we're getting through this, and where many cottage industries, school has been described as that before now, have succumbed. I mean, we are a niche market, but if we've learned anything, is that life is fragile, and what we know can be thrown into disarray in the blink of an eye. And during these difficult experiences, we need art, we need music. It's why we're here, to give us hope and stability. So it's too precious to lose, and the community here knows that from the inside. So yes, there's the positivity, and it is tinged with sadness that, you know, Eve and Lachlan will leave Coates Hall having had such an unusual experience. They haven't been able to have their end of term goodbyes the same way as they would. They haven't been able to do things the way they had hoped. But the resilience and the turnaround, the sheer bloody-mindedness, you know, that resilience has been breathtaking and frankly remarkable.
Well, it's really interesting to hear, one, that the note of positivity and optimism that's coming out of the school, and well done for doing all you've done over the past 15 months, but especially to our two youngsters here at this critical point in their career. And I'd just like to say at this point, one, thank you very much for being part of this, but also wishing you good luck in what you do. And it's up to you to keep music going. Unfortunately, people like me are on their way out, so we leave it to you. But wonderful. Now, I think at this point, we're able to hear a performance, is that right, Peter, of from Lachlan. It was from the Director's Prize performance that he gave of McCrimmon's Lament. He mentioned before he had an interest in traditional as well as classical music, so here is something I think that will prove that. was lovely. Thank you very much. Peter, have we any questions?
We have no questions, but we've had a variety of people send private messages of great congratulations to the pupils and to their next journey onto academic music. So no questions for now from a retired director, but again, more admiration. Thank you very much, Neil. So we've had, whilst not questions, a lot of congratulations coming through.
Well, that just remains for us to finish the proceedings. And to finish with, I'd like to assign you some homework. We were hoping to show a video also of a performance by Eve on saxophone, but technology has defeated us, I gather. And in terms of allowing the Vimeo to Zoom, so it just wasn't pleasant to watch. But that doesn't stop you enjoying it by linking direct via the chat function on the Zoom. Eve is playing the opening aria from Bach's Cantata 54, I think. Widerstehe doch der Sünde, which, if I remember correctly, means resist sin, which seems an opposite message for the head of school to end with. So this will remain live throughout the afternoon, so I would encourage you to have a listen to it. But thank you for all our panelists here today. It's been wonderful talking to you. And to our guests, just a reminder to go and have a listen to Eve playing this to balance up the performances that we had. So thank you for joining us and good afternoon.